Hi friends, I'm here to refilm a video I actually have tried to film a few times, but I feel like every single time I tried to film it, I was either like low energy or I just didn't feel like I was ready enough. And so this is my third time trying to film this video, and hopefully third time is the charm. This will be my January 2024 wrap-up where I talk about everything that I read in the month of January. And I have to say, I kicked off my reading year with excellent reading because that month, almost everything I read I enjoyed for one reason or another, and I'm very excited to get to talk about everything that I read. So we're gonna kick things off with the two series, one manga, one manhwa that I read in a month. If you recall from my reading goals video, I mentioned that I did want to tackle one manga series a month, and somehow in January I ended up tackling two since I'm now gonna count manhwa as part of that goal. Anyway, we're gonna talk first about A Sign of Affection, which is by Sue Morishita. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll probably recognize this title because I have mentioned it before. This is a shoujo manga. It's dedicated maybe to like a more new adult audience since our main character Yuki is actually a college student who is deaf. The story kicks off with an encounter that she has with an upperclassman named Itsuomi, who is this guy right here. They meet on the train when he helps her out when she is having this interaction with a foreigner, and they sort of form a relationship from there. And I really enjoy this manga. I love the vibes of it. It's very soft and sweet, and there's just something very comforting and cozy about it. And I absolutely devoured all the volumes that I owned because that was my goal when I restarted the series. So I've read volumes 1 through 7, I want to say. Yes, 1 through 7 right now. This is a series where I really love the art style. There's actually less dialogue in this particular manga, which suits the story really well. And I like that the manga artist really focuses on facial expressions and body language, and of course the sign language that is used in the manga for communication. This actually is a story that fascinates me because it's about Yuki and Itsuomi, but it's also about all of the people in their lives, whether in Itsuomi's life or Yuki's life or both of their lives, and how those relationships sort of form who they are and encourage them to be someone else. I guess you'll have to read it to find out. I really enjoy that. I like getting to know Yuki, who is this very ordinary college student who finds her life suddenly on a different trajectory after this chance encounter with Itsuomi. And it's not just Itsuomi, mind you, but I feel like she starts figuring things out for herself and wanting to try new things, and that's always an interesting path to follow. And then you have Itsuomi, who is already this carefree spirit, but he's learning to communicate in additional ways because of Yuki, and I like that a lot. I'm quite enjoying the story, and I'm curious to see where it goes because I honestly have no idea how it's going to end. There is actually an anime currently airing for this one, which was the other reason it was the first series I started this year. I'm a little behind. I'm a couple of episodes behind at this point, but I am looking forward to catching up. It does capture the beautiful, cozy, very watercolor-ish art style of this series, and yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing on with this one. The manhwa series, which I did not anticipate reading and then getting immediately caught up on, was a total surprise to me, and I should have seen it coming. I had instinctively purchased the box set of the first, I want to say 5 volumes of the manhwa because I was like, this looks like a thing that I would enjoy, but also that Maki would enjoy. It is in fact my brother-in-law who read the volumes we owned first and was like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And I was so convinced. I was like, let me try it. And then I also blasted through all of those volumes, and now I'm caught up. I have read 8 volumes of Solo Leveling. The original story was by Chugong, and then this was turned into a webcomic by Dubu, or Redice Studio. Solo Leveling is fantastic. It is about this guy, Song Ji-woo. He is a Korean hunter, and what that means is you have special abilities that allow you to access this other world and slay monsters there, enter dungeons, basically like a Dungeons and Dragons game, right? You enter the dungeon, you kill the monsters or the enemies, and you can bring back the loot and make money that way. And not everyone in Korea can do it. There's a select group, the hunters. However, he is considered the lowest ranked, worst hunter, probably the most inept, because he is rank E and not very strong and not very capable at all. But that changes on one mission that goes horribly, horribly wrong. And when he next finds himself awakening, he is suddenly infiltrated by this system that allows him to become a player and start leveling up on his own. And the story goes from there. And it is so freaking compelling. I already knew that I was gonna find the concept interesting. I just didn't expect to be sucked into it as much as I was. Plus, the way that this plot just continues to escalate and we get introduced to like new people in the cast and we see the stakes getting bigger and we also start questioning like, why does he have this ability? Where did it come from? What does it mean? And how is this all gonna come together in the end, considering how it all started? It's so compelling. And the one thing I do love about this particular edition, by the way, I do plan to read the light novels, but I do like the fact that I experience it this way is because it's all full color in there. And you know, this style and this story, it's just, there's something about seeing it illustrated, especially for panels that have like a lot of action in them, that just really works for me. So I flew through 1 to 7 and then I immediately read volume 8 when it came out last month in January. And yeah, I'm loving this. This one also has an anime adaptation, and Maki and I have been keeping up with that one because we're both obsessed and we love it so much. And yeah, I can't wait to continue on with the series, and I am genuinely just ready to find out what happens next. The next couple of books I'm going to talk about, I don't actually own copies of for a variety of reasons. So the first one is Lulu, Sinagtala and the City of Noble Warriors. I got this as an advanced review copy through NetGalley. This book is about Lulu, and she ends up sort of having to embrace who she really is and gather some allies along the way in order to save the world and the people she loves from a powerful maligno who is threatening the very existence of everything. This one was a fun middle grade adventure. I don't think I loved it nearly as much as the last Filipino-inspired one that I read, which was The Spirit Glass by Roshni Chokshi. But this one, I think if I had read it as a younger reader, I would have been so delighted to see so many familiar touchstones of the Filipino culture in it. From food, to the outfits, to the lore, everything about it just felt really magical. And I think it's always going to be refreshing, at least at this point, to see Filipino culture woven in so neatly and so, you know, organically in a story that got traditionally published. Like, it is wild to me that we get this opportunity now, and for that I think it is worth checking out, especially if you want to give it to someone younger who you kind of want to introduce to your Filipino culture and lore. This would be a good book for it. It has the hallmarks of a typical middle grade fantasy adventure where, you know, this main character is headstrong and discovering new things about herself and about this world that she had no clue existed. She has her trusty sidekicks and she has, you know, this quest that she's being sent on. And that formula works for a lot of younger readers. I know it did for me when I was growing up, and I do think that is going to appeal to a great many other individuals. It is a series, and it does end in a way that is satisfying but leaves room for more. I can't say personally that I'm gonna be jumping right into the next one. I'm not the target audience anymore after all, but it is one that I would keep on my radar just out of curiosity, because I would like to know how it all wraps up in the end. The next book I also got as a review copy from NetGalley, and that is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. And yes, this is out and I could technically buy it, but I did want to get the Fairy Loot edition to match the edition of the first book that I already owned, because Emily Wilde is so delightful. Okay, so in the second book, Emily and Wendell have returned to Cambridge and they're, you know, going about their lives there, but then mysterious fairies come and start attacking and, you know, causing mischief in the school. And so the two of them, along with Emily's niece and one of their other colleagues, and they end up going to Austria in order to investigate something that may be connected. And it's so delightful. It still has that cozy feeling of the first book, but this one has more action right off the bat. We are still very much in the head of Emily, so if you were not particularly fond of the way the first one was narrated, you might not be keen on this one either. But I personally love reading Emily's journal and having her tell us what's going on in the story. There's something so vivid about the way Heather Fawcett chose to voice this character that really makes the way that the character recounts the story pop off the page for me. It's someone telling me a story, but I can visualize it in my head, if that makes sense. And, you know, I loved getting to spend more time with Emily. I think she's great. And to watch her, you know, still be this studious, very academic, very determined, stubborn, independent, capable person, but also to see her dealing with these emotions that she's suddenly feeling for a lot of different reasons is so fun. And I loved seeing her relationship with her niece, Ariadne. I like seeing how she interacted with their colleague, Dr. Rose. And of course, seeing her interactions with Wendell was everything. It was just another fun time. And honestly, I said this about the first one, but like it felt like it could have been a standalone, and I still think that's true. This also feels like it could have been like another standalone, even though you technically have to have read the first one to have the history before you get to this one. However, I just found out there's going to be a third book, and I'm so excited about that. I honestly cannot get enough of the way this story is written. I love the narrative style, I enjoy this cast of characters, and I really like the take that this author has on fairies. Like, it feels exactly how fairy does, which is like, it's very surreal and beautiful and sort of tempting, and like in many ways it's very enticing, but there's also an eeriness and like a terrible trickery to it, and a kind of coldness that sometimes appears, and all of that was portrayed really well in this book. So clearly, if you couldn't tell, I quite enjoyed that sequel. The next book is one that I read for my family book club, and I borrowed this copy from the library and had to return it. It is a book called Happy Money, The Japanese Art of Making Peace with Your Money. That is the full title. So this nonfiction read has the author's take on ways for people to develop a better mindset and relationship with money in general in their lives. And in many ways, it kind of reminded me of how I felt when I read Marie Kondo's book for the first time. It's not that there were entirely new concepts, although there were, because there are some cultural things that I didn't even think of that feel like they would come from a more Japanese mindset. It did give words to some intuitive ways that I have been interacting with money, or learning to interact with money, over the last couple of years. And for that, I found it really interesting. I like that he does mention the emotional component that money has, whether you are receiving it or giving it or using it. And, you know, and there were a few things there that I earmarked to try to incorporate in my own routines with money and my own relationship with money. Overall, though, I don't generally think it's like the best advice book. It's more like a mindset reset kind of book. So if that's something you're interested in, if you want a new perspective on that, then maybe check it out. Otherwise, I'm sure there are other finance-related books that may be more helpful. The last book that I don't actually own that I read was for my buddy read with Danica. We ended up having The Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer be our first buddy read of the year, and it was a really solid way to start. The book follows mainly two perspectives. We have Aram and Marcus, who are both from the same village. Aram has always known he was different from everyone else in his village because he can see threads that others can't, and it turns out that this is something that marks him as extra special and gifted, and it actually puts him in a position where he can become a dragon rider. He can become the savior, basically, of a world that really needs him. And Marcus is one of his friends who also lives in the village, and he also is special in his own right for different reasons, and these two end up going through a lot of trials and tribulations on their journey to save the world, basically, at the end of this book. And, you know, this one, I said it a lot of times in my blog, but it has a very classic fantasy feel to it. It has the typical beginning point of this young man who doesn't know what he's destined for. He has to go through a lot of trials and a lot of schooling and a lot of, you know, practice and a lot of learning before he can reach the end goal and become the person who can fulfill this prophecy or this future where he can help save the good in the world. I liked the world building in this one. I thought it was interesting, just the way that the lore is set up and woven together. I feel like there are still some unanswered questions, but because it's part of a series, I know that I'll probably get those answers later on. But for what it is, like the setup and everything, it wasn't hard at all to get immersed in that and to understand, because a lot of typical fantasy tropes were woven into it. It towed the line really well between feeling very classic and more modern, if that makes any sense, considering it's a more recent release. I also enjoyed the characters. I didn't quite feel as personally invested in them, even the two main leads in this one, as I would have liked, but I did feel enough emotion for them to be concerned when terrible things were happening, and to also just want them to succeed at what they were aiming for. Also, this book definitely has dragons, and I love how dragons are such a part of the story and the role that they play. I think in many ways this is the type of dragon story that I love and I'm really into, so I really enjoyed that. And for a book that was really long, it flew by pretty fast for me. Like, I didn't at all feel like it was dragging at any point, so there's that. And I definitely hope that we will be getting the sequel soon, maybe? a book that was a complete surprise to me because I honestly didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but I'm glad I read it. It is The Invocations, which is by Crystal Sutherland, and this was really a total surprise. So in this one, there are 3 young women who are tied together when a serial killer starts going after witches. Where do I even begin with this book? I am normally not big on horror or mystery or thriller, and this book has all of those aspects in spades, especially sort of the body horror part of it. But honestly, it was just so captivating. A lot of that has to do with Crystal Sutherland's writing. There is a beautiful sort of cadence to her words and the way she chose to write, the different phrases she used, and just the rhythm and I guess the pacing as well. It all just came together so beautifully. She juggles 3 perspectives. There is Jude and Emmer and I want to say Zara, and they each have their own reasons for being involved in witchcraft. Emmer is an orphaned witch who sells her invocations to women who need them. Jude is someone who messed around with magic and is now trying to find a way to rid herself of a curse. And then Zara's only desire is to bring her sister Savannah back. And watching these 3 just get tied up together, like finding their lives intertwined in ways they probably wouldn't have seen coming, was really interesting. And to see the relationships that develop out of that was also really cool. There are a couple of conveniences here and there, which honestly I didn't mind so much because it just helped propel the story forward. And at some point the action just picked up so much that I could not put this book down. I could not stop reading until I got to the end. Content warnings are definitely necessary for this one because there's a lot going on, but I thought this was really masterfully done and really powerful, and it was a total surprise to me how much I enjoyed it considering the subject matter and the plot of this story. Yeah, this was definitely a surprise, and in a good way, and I definitely want to try to read other books by Crystal Sutherland and maybe see what she has coming next. Okay, we now have 2 romance books that I need to talk about. Both were great. We're going to start with The Front Runner, which is by Elsie Silver, the 3rd book in the Gold Rush Ranch series. Before I started this book, I honestly would not have believed you if you had told me that the hero in it would become one of my favorites in the series. And he is actually one of my favorites in the series. This romance in particular centers around Mira Thorne, who is a vet that we have met in the previous books in the series, who now works for the Gold Rush Ranch crew, and Stefan Dalka, who is basically public enemy number 1 after some things that happen in the first 2 books. And these 2 end up having to team up when there is a orphan foal that needs a mare to sort of take over its care, and Stefan has the mare, the foal is from Gold Rush, and so Mira kind of oversees that transaction, and they end up striking up a friendship and that becoming something more. I was not surprised that I really enjoyed this book because I enjoyed Elsie Silver's previous 2 books in the series a whole lot, and her writing is still as wonderful as ever in this one. I particularly enjoyed the fact that this felt a little more lighthearted in tone compared to the previous 2 books. And it's not that the characters aren't dealing with some tough stuff, they are, but for some reason there was just this very like rom-com energy, especially at the beginning of the book. I love that there were new horses in this one. I'm a sucker for horses in books, and it was just so delightful that there was a foal in this one. Loved him. What was really surprising to me was, as much as I like Mira, and I do, I think she's great because she's so independent and she's so, you know, capable and determined and like cool. She strikes me as like being cool. I really love Stefan. Personally, I'm guessing it's because I love it when the guy is really like so head over heels for the girl. Love that. But I also love that he's like a caring older brother and that he has all of this vulnerability and emotion that he's trying to work through because of the things he's experienced in his past. And so The Front Runner was great. I got emotional by the end of it because, you know, things. It does take like a pretty dramatic turn at the end, mind you. But yeah, it was a good time, and I'm glad I continued reading the Gold Rush Ranch series. We have to talk about my favorite romance so far that I have read in 2024, and that is The Breakup Tour, which is by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegemund-Broca. And when I tell you, I had a feeling that I was gonna really enjoy this, okay? Because the setup is giving me Taylor Swift. It is about Riley. She is the main character. She's a pop star, a singer-songwriter, and she's written this very successful album that has songs dedicated or about all of her exes. When the tabloids kind of make it out like the single is about her famous like celebrity husband, and it's really not. It's actually about her college ex. She ends up, you know, inviting the college ex to go on tour with her, and he does for reasons of his own. and sparks may or may not fly between the two of them again. This book was so good. Like I knew I was gonna like it because I have enjoyed things that this author duo has written before. Their adult debut especially, it was really an emotional read for me, and it's one I still think about from time to time. But this book, oh my goodness. This is for the Swifties for sure. Like I 100% feel like if you are a Taylor Swift fan, you're probably gonna enjoy this book because it has that energy. But at the same time, these authors were able to just really draw out these two characters. You have Riley, who loves her career, loves being a singer and songwriter, and loves connecting with her fans, but also still has so much vulnerability that she has to keep to herself and doesn't know if she can really share with anyone at this point. She's got these two sides to herself, and it's all her, and it's, you know, things that not everyone can necessarily appreciate or understand. And then you have Max as well, who, you know, is questioning his path in life, if he took the right one or if he should take this chance. And so he's starting to evaluate that stuff too. And then you sort of see how their relationship was and how it is and how it could be. And like, oh my God, all of these things were so wonderful. One of the other things I really enjoyed was all the musical metaphors in this. I just love the way that these authors incorporated that into the way they told the story. There's also just something about the writing that really worked for me. I have like so many lines tabbed and so many pictures of like pages of this book because it was just so good. Like this book was the first book like in a while where I was like, I think I was like 5 chapters or 7 chapters away from the end, and I was just like sobbing my eyes out while I was reading because I was so emotionally invested in both Riley and Max, and I loved their romance, and I loved seeing that relationship blossom. And you know, I don't know what else to tell you except that the Breakup Tour was so good. It was so good, and I'm still so emotional just thinking about it, and now I kind of want to reread it again, which I might have to do at some point so I can properly annotate. But yeah, Breakup Tour, highly recommend. I'm gonna quickly run you through the next part because honestly, I have talked about these books on this channel so many times before, and this was more like an impulsive thing, at least on the part of one of these things. So I impulsively decided at the start of the year, I was like, you know what would be great? If I reread a series that I really love. And of course, what did I choose to reread? A series that I have reread multiple times, and that is the Throne of Glass series. Editing Alexa here. I wanted to take a minute to film a clip because since I filmed this video as well as my February wrap-up, my friend Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany invited me to join her and a couple of other YouTube creators in order to do a Sarah J. Maas read-along. She called it the Mass Effect read-along, which I love. We will be reading one Sarah J. Maas book a month starting this month, March 2024, all the way through 2025. I think it was September if she has a new release. It's going to be fun. Bethany has all the details on her channel, so I'll link to her video down below. We'll be doing live shows monthly, and I hope you'll join us. Our first book, obviously, is going to be Throne of Glass, and as you saw in this video, I have already reread it. I did that before I knew this was happening, but I am excited to be able to talk to other people about it, especially given I've started taking notes on all the books while I'm reading them. So it should be really fun, and I hope you'll consider joining us. So I reread The Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, and Crown of Midnight in the month of January. I did this via audio reread, and you know, just experiencing this story again is always... It's always so fun for me, even though I know exactly how everything plays out. I love this world and these characters and this story so much, and just getting to experience it over and over again, I don't think I'll ever get sick of it. Like, I literally, every time, I'm always like, oh my gosh, I'm still emotional, and like sobbing and laughing and keeping quotes and all of that. Like, I just had a really good time revisiting these 3. But then I decided to put a pause on that because I needed to reread something else in preparation for something else. And so I ended the month by rereading House of Earth and Blood and House of Sky and Breath, which are the 2 books in the Crescent City series that had been released prior to 2024. And I also did these mostly on audio, and that was also brilliant. I think it was an exciting new way to experience this particular series. I have reread this one before. I hadn't reread this one ever. So just having the audio experience was really interesting for me because I feel like it made everything more exciting in some ways, and like I don't know, I just felt like I was really in the depths of all the action and stuff that was going on. This is her latest series, and while it's not my favorite of all of her early series, Throne of Glass will always hold that place in my heart. I did really enjoy the time I spent rereading this one and this one, despite the fact that this one in the last 133 pages had me sobbing, and this one got me super emotional at the end of it. It was just a good time. I was having a ball rereading days, and that's pretty much all I want to say about that. Anyway, those are all the books that I read in the month of January. Well, books, manhwa, and manga that I read in the month of January. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and hearing my thoughts on them. If you had any more questions or thoughts about these books yourselves, please feel free to leave a comment. I love seeing them. I know I've been horrible at replying, but I'm hoping to get better at that starting now. I say that all the time, but I feel like I've been so terrible. I'm really sorry about that. Anyway, if you want to catch more videos from me, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. You can also find me online everywhere else, which is linked down below, and I'll see you guys with the next video. Bye!